And a hush falls over the crowd. Hush. Buenos dias y bienvenidos. I am the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, your assistant minister, and it is a beautiful day inside at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, a liberal religious community where love works. Our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. Together, we dare to come to service even when the time changes, to practice and embody the beloved community where all are welcome. Please know that whoever you are, wherever you are from, whomever you love, wherever you are on this life's journey, and whatever your gender identity, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here. A special welcome to those who are joining our service online, whether in the moment or catching up with us later. We are glad to have you with us. If you're new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. Please raise your hand if you're comfortable doing so, and please keep it raised for just a moment so our ushers and greeters can find you. Included with your gift is a beautiful brochure that introduces you to Cedar Lane. We invite you to complete the form at the back of that brochure and place it in the offering plate as it comes around. As a liberal faith, what holds us together is our ability to connect deeply and know that the greatest gift that you can give us today, besides your presence, is the ability to stay connected. Let us give a warm Cedar Lane welcome to our visitors and guests today. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcement page and have just a few highlights for you. Our lay pastoral visitors work closely with the ministers to support the pastoral ministry of our congregation. If you have a pastoral need or concern, Joanne will be at the Joys and Sorrows Candles table throughout the service as well as after the service. A service of celebration of the life of longtime member Martha Quayle will be held next Saturday, March 16th at 2 p.m. All are welcome to attend. Ethical eating potluck will be at 6 p.m. this Wednesday. We will not have Vespers, however. We invite you to join the Communities of Action in Montgomery on Thursday, March 14th at 7 p.m. at Bethel World Outreach Church in Olney for an action with County Executive Mark Elrich and members of the County Council. We have committed to having a minimum of 30 members from Cedar Lane in attendance to join with the more than 300 individuals from other AIM communities. This is another chance to hold our elected officials accountable to their social justice commitments, and we hope that you will attend. Now, in keeping with the spirit of deepening your connection to community, I invite you to turn and greet your neighbors.
Yet again come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again come. Between rocking the boat and sitting down, between stirring things up and peaceably going along, we find ourselves here in community.
Each called from many different journeys, many different life paths onto this river road.
Some are here because the rocking of the boat has been too much tumult, too much uncertainty, too much pain.
Some are here with questions about where the boat is going, how best to steer it, and where the journey ends.
Others are here as lovers of the journey, lovers of life itself, here in front, beside, behind, each a passenger, each a captain, doing the best we can.
Rest here in your boat with me. The river calls, and listen to how I flow. The sound of life coursing all around you.
Let the current hold you. Let the current guide you. The river that gently flows through your soul whispers, "Come, let us worship together."
As Nate Hultman, Ellenberg, Linnea, and Silas kindle the chalice, please rise in body or in spirit to share in unison the chalice lighting words. We kindle the chalice in honor of what we co-create together, our shared ministry. May the chalice be to us a symbol of the sharing of faith and love. May its flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment. Please remain as you are to sing hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
We Good morning, everybody. Thanks for setting your clocks ahead so we could be together. My name is Fran Flieger, and I'm really, really thankful to Reverend Abhi and as well as Mary Means, who I don't see, but she asked me to do this affirmation several weeks ago. And when she did that, I said, ugh, public speaking, ugh. So I said, what, 4 or 5 minutes? And she said, no, more like 2. And I said, yes, I can do 2. So about this time last year, I found myself coming down in flames spiritually, and that was a clue that I had to kind of get focused on where I was heading with my spiritual path. And I was attracted to Universalist Unitarianism because I knew it was a liberal religion with values that I shared, and I knew everybody was welcome, and that suited me quite fine as a lesbian. And I knew that social justice was a focus of most of these congregations, so I was attracted to the mission of helping others. I had just retired from my career at NOAA, where I had a mission there too, and I missed it more than I thought I would when I stopped working. So when I visited here at Cedar Lane for the first time last Easter, I found that I could check all of those boxes, you know, rainbow flags, social justice, into all these things that I'm into. But what I didn't expect was something that's much more difficult to describe, but I'm going to try. I felt truly welcomed here at first sight. So I think there's a difference, as I started to think about this last night, there's a difference between being greeted and being welcomed. And I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but I have more than once, where you go to a big gathering and you don't know anybody, but there's somebody greeting you, and they shake your hand and they look you in the eye for just a moment, and they're smiling and they say welcome. And then it's as if you feel like they're trying to look around you to see who's behind you. And it's almost like they wish you were a plate of glass right now, just for a second, so that they could see what else was going on. And that's being greeted, but it's not being welcomed. Here, the greeters welcomed me, and I knew that because they were introducing me to other people as soon as they walked up. I felt welcome because they made eye contact, they listened, I talked, they listened. And I really got this feeling that they had all the time in the world to talk to me, even though I know darn well they didn't, but I had the feeling that they did. And in subsequent visits, folks remembered my name, or if they didn't remember my name, they remembered I was new. And they would come up and they'd say, "How are you doing? Good to see you again." It seems like a very small gesture, but it's gigantic. Especially since November 2016, I've been looking for a place where I can grow spiritually and feel safe. It's been an interesting experience of feeling unsafe again after having felt kind of safe as a lesbian in the world. And so that's been something for me to kind of get my brain wrapped around. I'm also an abuse survivor, and so safety is always it's job one for me at all times. And this congregation almost immediately felt like a net that could hold me no matter what happened to me, or no matter how I felt. And these feelings of safety are further reinforced from our friends in the pulpit during the greeting and other times when they say, "It doesn't matter who I love," and they say it's okay if I have wounds, even if they're unseen. I'm welcome here, and I feel that. So I feel genuine caring here, and you all are helping me to discover ways to feed my soul and serve others at my own sometimes halting pace. And as I engage in these new activities, some of which are way outside my skill set, looking for Tim Atkins, he got me to teach 4th grade this year, I hear over and over again from members of the community and the staff and everywhere, the most important thing is that you care. And I think that's right. So thank you all.
Come, wanderer, come, worshiper, as we gather as companions on life's journey, as we gather to bear witness to our joys and our sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support for our community. Now, when I hold up my arms, I invite you to say, "We hold you in our hearts." If you are living through the small and extraordinary milestones of life, we hold you in our hearts. If parenting is your spiritual practice, we hold you in our hearts. If you are mourning a loss, we hold you in our hearts. If you live with or care for someone with grief and chronic pain, we hold you in our hearts. If you are struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, we hold you in our hearts. If you have suffered abuse or injustice, we hold you in our hearts. In our Cedar Lane community, we offer our sympathies to Usha Charya, whose father, Colonel Sharma, passed away in India on February 18th. We also rejoice with Mike Benefield, who welcomes his granddaughter, Tosh. We hold you in our hearts. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost or impacted by violence and calamities in our world. This week, especially the 23 people killed by a devastating tornado in Alabama. We hold you in our hearts. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all that lies in our hearts, both unspoken and spoken, be held in the embrace of prayer by a love that will not let us go. Thank you.
I invite you into a time of meditation and prayer to find your breath, find your pulse, find your stillness. And let us breathe together. I want to hear it. The inhale, the exhale. This breath, this life-giving breath is shared. Shared among the people in this room and shared throughout all of time. This is the same breath shared by our ancestors and shared long into the future. The great-great-grandchildren we will never meet share this very breath. As we remember how our breath is recycled from other people's lungs, even our enemies are in the very air that we breathe. We remember this life-giving act of breathing that happens whether we think about it or not, but when we do think about it, when we do breathe with intention, we send signals to our body that we are intentional, that we are relaxing, we are becoming fully present to this moment, to all the realities. And this breath that once belonged to our ancestors also belonged to those that we have lost along the way. So we breathe to remember them, and we breathe to bring them back into this space with us. And with that memory, I invite those who are remembering a particular loss, grieving currently in any stage of the grieving process, I invite you to stand and be held. Stand in body or spirit, rise like an inhale, and be held in this community. We breathe into your experiences of grief. We hold you in our hearts. You may be seated. Blessed be, may it be so, and amen.
Every week is an act of shared ministry. It is both a symbol and an act, an intentional act. A symbol that represents who we are as a faith community, as a Unitarian Universalist faith community that is organized independently as a self-sustaining religious community. It is an intentional act because we each are invited to bring and share of our gifts, be it in the form of a gift that we make on any particular Sunday or a pledge of financial commitment that we make periodically, monthly, annually. And that is why it is an important ritual that we do week after week. Now, sharing the ministry in the context of paying our pledges doesn't mean we just pay our pledges. It means we give, we pledge as generously as we can, taking it off the top. Because our religious community is so important to us that the way we support it and its mission and its ministries is not expendable when times get tough. It may even mean that in tough times we pledge more, because it is precisely in tough times that our religious community is present to us in a way no other institution in society is or is expected to be. So I thank all of you, Cedar Lane members and friends, who have made a generous commitment to our annual campaign thus far, that we're almost at the halfway mark to our $900,000 goal. But we're only at the halfway mark, and we have another halfway to journey through until March 31st, when we come together for our celebration Sunday. So we have time. And so, if you're so moved, you're welcome to make your pledge today, after the service. Stop by the table, the generosity table, and our volunteers there will be happy to assist you, because no commitment is too small or too great. I invite the ushers to now come forward to give and receive an offering to sustain the mission and ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. Thank you for your generosity. for the gifts that we are and the gifts that we bring and share to make shared ministry happen. May we be grateful. Our reading this morning is from the Reverend Dr. Gordon Mckeeman, a Universalist minister. He writes, "Ministry is a quality of relationships between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities.
It is inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and one another.
Ministry is carrying forward a long heritage of hope and liberation that has dignified and informed the human venture over many centuries.
It is being present with others in their terrors and torments, in their grief and pain, knowing that those feelings are our feelings too.
Ministry is celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice.
It is witnessing to life-enhancing values, speaking truth to power, standing for human dignity and equity, for compassion and for aspiration.
Ministry is believing in life in the presence of death, struggling for human responsibility against principalities and powers in institutions and structures that ignore humaneness and become instruments of death.
It is all these and much, much more than all of them, present in the wordless, the unspoken, the ineffable.
It is speaking and living the highest we know, and living with the knowledge that it is never as deep, as wide, or as high as we wish.
Wherever there is a meeting that summons us to our better selves, wherever our lostness is found, our fragments are reunited, our wounds begin healing, our spines straighten and our muscles grow strong, there is ministry.
See one tiny spark, still small and bright,
Thank you, members of the choir, Jasmin and Henry, for those two beautiful pieces, really celebrating shared ministry, both in word, music, and the act of sharing that music. Beautiful. Thank you. Good morning. Especially good morning to some of our children who are here this morning. Thank you for coming to church when there is no RE today. That is really a staunch act, even if it was prompted by your parents. I'm really glad to see you all. And you're welcome to nap, along with some of the adults who like doing that as a spiritual practice, right? Mindful meditation. Anyway, in one of the memoirs written toward the end of his life, 19th century Unitarian divine Theodore Parker recalls how all his friends had advised against the ministry, saying that it was a narrow place affording no opportunity to do much. That's part of your learning. But Parker, you see, thought it was a wide place and decided to do his best, and thereby transformed the liberal religious landscape in 19th century America. But how would we answer today? Is the liberal religious ministry a narrow place affording no opportunity to do much, or is it, as Parker thought and believed, a wide place? Well, the truth, it seems to be, is that it can be either or both. It is full of our theological favorites, paradox and ambiguity. Because when I think about what it is that we ministers, our professional ministers, have to struggle with and contend with, I see that liberal ministry can be a narrow place when it is looked at from the perspective of ministry as somehow being a role only to be played out by an individual, meaning a professional minister. Now, part of the difficulty or issue and confusion that we ministers face when struggling with this is deciding to what to give our loyalty. To what or whom do you give your best time, your best energy? Faith development theorist James Fowler asks, and most of us would answer to the church. And so we invest our lifeblood and hopes, long hours, and significant angst, sometimes with very little to show for it, as sometimes my board report reflects. But we do all that amidst very high expectations, sometimes unfairly high. Reminded of this joke about a young minister who was called to this congregation in Tampa Bay, Florida. And to celebrate her being called, the congregation decided to have a potluck, a vegan potluck by the beach. And everybody was having fun, eating tofu. And suddenly, well, you could have fun eating tofu, as some of our vegan cooks will attest. They do make some kick-ass recipes from, so, sorry, just slipped out. It's not in the script. That's how it gets in. Anyway, where was I? So they were all having fun, and suddenly there was this piercing scream of a parent shouting, "Help, help, my child is drowning." And everybody looked towards the water, and sure enough, they saw this child out there flailing his arms and crying for help. And so some of the members immediately jumped into the water and started swimming towards the boy to pick him up, to save him. When some of them observed the newly called minister, who very calmly took off her shoes, lifted up her skirt, stepped on the water, and walked on water towards the boy, picked him up, and carried him back and laid him gently on the beach. Now, everyone was stunned by this miracle when one member turned to the other and said, "Great, we called someone who can't swim." So that's what I mean about unfairly high expectations, that even when we know how to walk on water, we are reminded that we don't know how to swim. But there is another way to conceive of the liberal ministry, a way that is broad enough to include not only those who are trained and called for full-time occupational service to our congregations, but to include also all laypersons who are striving in and through their lives to fulfill their spiritual calling and commitments. I'm referring, of course, to the concept of shared ministry. So what is shared ministry? Now, the term itself, shared ministry, is a catchword now in some circles for what congregational life at its best ought to be. Basically, what it means is that all people, clergy and lay, are called to ministry. And in that sense, minister is not a noun, but a verb. Ministry is all that we do together, as Gordon Mckeeman reminds us. Now, shared ministry in that framework means that as members of a faith community, we are all invited to serve together in a spirit of mutuality and covenant as partners. Working cooperatively and collaboratively, we strive to discover, develop, utilize, and support the gifts of each and all of us, and as responsible and generous stewards, to participate in the ongoing creative and restoring activity in our communities and in our world. So shared ministry means moving away from this notion that ministry somehow is the copyright of those who are paid professional ministers, that is something that they do or are expected to do, or that equally harmful perception that a minister's job is somehow only to tell lay people what to do and then sit back and relax while you struggle through it. Ministry is shared ministry when we are all engaged in it together. You see, churches call ministers to do particular work. You call us because we agree to take on the responsibility and the loneliness of being among you for a while in order to keep the traditions of religion's larger history and vision continually before you, in order to be witnesses to the passages of your lives, in order when conflict erupts in our congregations, and conflict does erupt in our congregations, including Cedar Lane, to remind you to do the work of love and reconciliation, and in order to hear and to keep the secrets of the confessional. We went to seminary, and Christin's going to seminary to learn some things, and other things we have learned in other ways that we choose not to share with you. We're both skilled and called to do the professional work of the ministry. Our specialty is to know, to protect, and to transmit and to transform the unique religious insights of our faith, Unitarian Universalism. And I say that no one has a more diverse and complex job than a congregational minister. Because we preach, we teach, we counsel, we prophesy, we witness, we pastor, we administer, we try to balance budgets, we coach, we cheerlead, we comfort, we afflict, even when you don't want to be afflicted, and when we can find the time in the midst of all this, we try to be scholars. But we cannot and should not do it all, because we need you as much as you need us, and it is together that we make ministry happen. Together we make our faith a living, vibrant reality, and we make our lives a journey toward wholeness. To quote my colleague Carl Gregg, shared ministry is the difference between asking someone, will you do this for me, and will you help me do this? The difference between those two approaches, he writes, is all the difference in the world. So shared ministry is about partnership, power with, instead of power over. And the approach of shared ministry says that we are together in this work of transforming ourselves within, among, and beyond. It means that both clergy and laity make a healing, holy enterprise out of their religious community. It means we each take responsibility for the health and wholeness and holiness of our religious community to co-create the beloved community. So shared ministry emphasizes the truth that we all have been blessed with unique and valuable gifts meant to be discovered, developed, and shared on behalf of others and in service of a life much larger than our own. So it is more of a commitment rather than a contribution, which brings me back to my repeatedly familiar old saw that many of you have heard me share before, and I can't help myself. The chicken and pig. How many of you remember that joke? Oh, only a few, then I can tell you. All right, good. It's always good. See, one of my mentors, Tony Larson, once told me when I just started out in the ministry, he said, Abhi, even if you preach the same sermon a few years later, make sure you change the stories and the jokes. Because people will forget what the hell you said, but they'll always remember the joke or the story. But in this case, since you may not remember, here we go. So a chicken and a pig were walking along a highway where they happened to see this huge billboard announcing this wholesome breakfast. And forgive me, my vegan, vegetarian friends, it had a plate of bacon and eggs on it. And so the chicken turned to the pig and said rather expansively, isn't it wonderful how you and I serve humanity? To which the pig replied, it's easy for you to say. For you, it's a contribution, whereas for me, it is total commitment. So shared ministry invites us all to be pigs, not chickens. It emphasizes the truth that we all have been blessed, and we are called to share those blessings. It turns the arc of our understanding of the church a few degrees so that we move from our idea of the church as a spiritual mall, a service provider, where we expect someone to meet our every need, our whim, our want, or consumer complaint. And if we don't get that met, we take our toys and go to a different church, or we go home. That's not what shared ministry is. It means we come to understand the church as a cooperative endeavor where we empower ourselves to do the work of our own healing and also join together to do the work of our collective healing and the healing of our broken and beautiful world. It is where we listen to others with our hearts, not just with our ears. It means we engage intellectually and spiritually with our tradition and with its movement through time and culture. And it means we do not smugly, condescendingly dismiss other understandings, even when they are different from our own, even when they make us very uncomfortable, that we make the difficult choice of learning not just to sit with our discomfort, but work our way through our discomfort, where we stretch to embrace the proponents of ideas with which we may never agree, but we embrace those because the people who bear those ideas are worthy and seeking and have inherent dignity as we do. as we are the many truths that we can refine together. It means we use not only our reason, but all our intelligence and our compassion, engaging with others in thoughtful, respectful conversations where we learn to listen more than we talk. So sharing the ministry means that instead of doing church work, we do the work of the church. Not merely a semantic distinction here. It is the difference between work as obligation, work as passion, between doing work until we burn out and doing the work that we are called, that life calls us to. It is discovering that where we can say a good, clear yes to something, we can also discover a good, clear no for the work we want to do. It means we all need to identify our gifts for the ministry. Because there are 1,000 worthy things that on any given day a congregation could do. But if a congregation tried to do all those things, your attention and energy would likely end up being scattered. And likely less would be accomplished than if the focus were only with a few things, but not so short that it's only 2 or 3 things, but to find that right balance so that we're actually not only feeling called, but also doing the work of ministry. But as Unitarian Universalists, our independent streak, which leads us to just look at ourselves as a community of individuals rather than as a community, which is also the same trait that sometimes emboldens us to question authority indiscriminately, can make us much better at pursuing our individual goals than in joining to accomplish a few major things that are only possible with all of us working together as a congregation. Now, all of this to say that we're already engaged in shared ministry. Our worship is shared ministry between professional and lay. Our pastoral visitors is a form of shared ministry. Our choir is shared ministry. The work we do in religious education is shared ministry. The work we do with social justice is shared ministry. The work we are doing with almost 200 people engaged in the work of sanctuary is shared ministry. What we do when we welcome people when they come to help them feel that sense of belonging that Fran alluded to is shared ministry. So we're already doing it. But what we need to do more of is to bring more people into it. You see, there's that anecdotal thing that church consultants say that in any given church, 20 people are doing 80% of the work. And then there is the 9% who are inappropriately angry all the time. After 20 years, I will say there is truth to that statement. But let's just focus on the 20% doing all the 80% of the work. We need to expand that. And to do that, we need to recognize that this is our spiritual home, not their spiritual home that we sometimes occasionally visit, drop a $20 bill in the plate, and think that our time and our good deed is done for the week. If this is what nurtures our spirits and enlivens us to go out into the world to do that healing work of resilience, resistance, we need to give of ourselves a bit more. That's what shared ministry challenges us. Because each of us, minister and congregant, has gifts for this ministry. Each of us has gifts in the giving of which we actually grow our souls. But even with our unique talents, gifts, and commitments that we bring to our congregation, there is something else that is needed to make shared ministry work. There's a story recorded in the 18th century Hebrew book that highlights what I mean, and I will close with that story. It's the story of a young man who wanted to be a blacksmith. So he became an apprentice to a blacksmith and learned all the necessary techniques of the trade, how to hold the tongs, how to lift the sledge, how to smite the anvil, even how to blow the fire with the bellows. Having finished his internship, he was chosen to be employed at the smithy of the royal palace. However, the young man's delight soon came to an end when he discovered that for all his skill and knowledge in handling the tools, they were of no avail because he had not learned one really important thing: how to kindle the spark. And so it is for us here at Cedar Lane. Without that spark, everything else will be meaningless. Without the spark of ministry, the desire to serve others, it won't make one whit of a difference what the project or event is. It won't make any difference how badly it's needed or how urgent the call is. Without the sparks of dedication, love, presence, enthusiasm, whatever we do will lose its meaning, its value, the reason we wish to call this place our spiritual home. But I know we will not fail. I know we will continue to grow and flourish and distribute our grace. So, in that spirit, I invite us not only to ponder what shared ministry means to each and all of us, but to consider making a deeper commitment to what makes community, what builds community, and what sustains community. To that, I say, amen. And the people say, amen. So may it be. Please rise in body and/or in spirit to sing the UU version of Onward Christian Soldiers, which I love. And let us sing it like we mean it. Lively. Please remain as you are, and if you feel moved, hold hands with your neighbor for these words from the Reverend Susan Manker. Much of ministry is a benediction, a rising up and speaking well of each other and the world, a rising up and living well of what we value: honesty, love, forgiveness, trust. A rising up and striving well to co-create the beloved community. A rising up and living out our shared ministry. This is how we celebrate life, through rising up and speaking well of it, through rising up and living the benediction and becoming as a word well spoken. Go in peace. Go making peace, living gently, loving mightily, and bowing to the mystery. So may it be. Please be seated for the postlude.